And just because I can, though, doesn't mean I should. And that has been something that along the way became at one point kind of a blocker to me being able to grow in my leadership because, you know, I have this philosophy of you can really grow by letting go. And what I mean by that is it's okay to let go of those things that you used to do yourself and then help other people, empower them to be able to do those things so that you can provide that higher level kind of direction or strategy or leadership or whatever it might be. But I think it's one of the hardest things for leaders to do because often people who become leaders, there's the whole idea of natural born leaders, but also people that have the leadership traits are often people that are highly capable of doing stuff themselves. And it's a tough switch at least for me, it has been.
Can you tell me a story or a time where you got that switch to happen in one of the leaders that you were building?
Yes. For me to get that switch to happen, I think back to when I was sort of producing and then executive producing games. And, I loved being a producer on the front line, working with the game team, getting stuff done. And then I got promoted to be an executive producer and would have to oversee multiple games with multiple producers. And, you know, my initial instinct was to treat these producers kind of as still associate producers, and I would still top down kind of direct what had to happen and guide them. But then it made me pretty inefficient when I had to turn around into the rest of the organization and communicate to the rest of the leadership team what was going on with this portfolio of games, because all of my time was still focused on doing what I was used to doing. And at the same time, I was getting frustrated because I felt like, gosh, I can't step away to do all of this internal upward management because my producers aren't giving me what I need. Well, the reality is they weren't giving me what I needed was because I was still too involved. And as I stepped back and I started to empower them and I started to say, hey, here's what I need from you so that I can go communicate to the rest of the organization, right? And I kind of shifted from creating the reports, for instance, for them to letting them know what kind of things and information I needed and they could get there themselves. It started to really flow and work. And then, that allowed me to grow as a leader, both perceived within the company, but also from, the output of my teams. People felt empowered and were, creating better materials for me to be able to communicate and all the things. It just really started to work.
And many large software organizations that I have been in or I consulted or coached to, the director level is kind of the first level where a leader is leading managers or leading leaders, not individual contributors. And this is that pivot point where it is extremely difficult and they have to start seeing things differently. They're doers and fixers. They love on their review. I give things to Chris because Chris, I know you're going to get it done. And they have to step away from that. That's really, really difficult to get our people to do.